Today we look at the all-new redesigned 2022 Rocky Mountain Altitude Alloy 30. To be honest, I was a bit skeptical of more moving mechanical parts, and for some reason I neglected to review this monster of an eMTB. So for those that are not familiar with the Rocky Mountain Altitude Powerplay and are wondering why they have a high pivot design, it is because the rear axle rotates in a rearward motion to better absorb impacts and eliminate pedal kickback. And what is even more interesting is that Rocky Mountain has designed the newest Dynamate 4.0 motor in-house, giving them the absolute edge in transferring their rider feedback and data onto the motor. The 2022 Rocky Mountain Altitude Powerplay Alloy 30 has a full-on aluminum front and rear triangle, 29-inch wheels front and rear, with 170 millimeters of travel up front and 160 millimeters of travel in the rear. It has tons of adjustability with the Ride 4 adjustment system, giving you 4 different geometries as well as a flip chip to adjust the chainstay length. The new Altitude Powerplay definitely has everything I've been looking for in an eMTB. New tech to help with bump compliance, high power, lots of battery, and some very sick integration of the electronic. I highly suggest watching some of the reviews from Lone Wolf made on the Altitude Powerplay. That is, after you watch my video, of course. He does an excellent job on explaining the ride characteristics of the Dynamate 4.0. So before we begin, help me by smashing that like button. It really helps with getting my videos spread across YouTube platform and hopefully help other people on their decision on purchasing their first eMTB or an upgrade to their existing eMTB. So let's rate the Rocky Mountain Altitude Alloy 30 Coil on the Send a Frankie rating system and see how well it does. For those who are new to my channel, my rating system is based on a 10-point average system. The bike will be ranked based on 5 categories: cost, battery, torque, integration, and parts that don't match the price. We then average all the categories together and place it on the Send a Frankie scale, and at the end of the year, we could possibly define a Send a Frankie eMTB of the year. So I'm really excited. Maybe, who knows, I might pick up the Send a Frankie eMTB of the year. So with that being said, let's start with the price. The 2022 Altitude Powerplay Coil 30 MSRPs at $5,749. A solid price for a base level bike. Just a tad more expensive than the Turbo Levo Alloy and the Trek Wheel 5. A really good price for a base tier bike. I give this a solid rating of 8 out of 10. Next, we look at the battery. The Altitude Powerplay 30 Coil has a huge battery of 720 watt hours. I think all manufacturers need to pay attention to what Rocky Mountain is doing on this bike. Just stop with the 500 watt hour battery at the base models and do it like Rocky Mountain. I know you can do it. I know these manufacturers can do it. Even at the lowest tier bikes, it has a standard of 720 watt hour for a base tier. A huge, big 10 out of 10 rating in this category. Big kudos to Rocky Mountain for going all out on this one. Next, we look at the torque. The Dynamate 4.0 is an in-house design motor with a whopping 108 Newton meters of torque, the biggest torque out of any motor so far. They've also added an inline torque sensor that reads the tension on your chain, and the information is then processed onto the drive to give instant assist. Definitely thinking outside the box on this one, a perfect 10 out of 10. Next up is the integration, and I must say Rocky Mountain has done it. They introduced the brand new Jumbotron display into the top tube, giving you assist levels, battery levels, and the ability to adjust on the fly, as well as a redesigned 3-button micro remote for that minimal clutter in the cockpit area. I'm pretty much out of words for this one. Other brands do not include their best tech into their base model. Probably the only complaint for not getting a perfect 10 in this category is including a touchscreen on the Jumbotron. Maybe I'm asking too much, but other than that, this deserves a 9 out of 10. Very nicely done. Next, we move on to parts that don't match the price. We rate this by adding points to 4 component categories, specifically the fork, suspension, drivetrain, and the brakes. The higher the points, the lower the score. Starting with the fork, the Altitude Powerplay Alloy 30 coil has a RockShox Domain RC, an excellent 38mm stanchion fork for a base model, so no points added here. Next, we look at the rear shocks, a Marzuki Bomber CR coil shock. Again, another excellent choice by Rocky Mountain on the rear shocks. You definitely would be riding these shocks for quite a while. The only drawback to coil shocks is that you might run into a possibility of changing the springs out itself to fit your weight, but nonetheless, a superb choice, no points added. Now let's look at the drivetrain. The Altitude Powerplay 30 coil comes with a Diori 11-speed shifter and derailleur combo. We were so close to being perfect. I wish this would have been a 12-speed setup, so that's 2 points added. The brakes is a Diori MT 4100 series brakes, which is the base Shimano 4-piston brake set, a standard and expected brakes to have for a base model, so no points added in this category. This gives us a total of 2 points, which translates to an 8 out of 10 in the category of parts that don't match the price. So let's recap on the total points. The Rocky Mountain Altitude Powerplay Alloy 30 coil received an 8 out of 10 for an MSRP of $5,749. It received a perfect 10 with a 720 watt-hour battery for a base model. It also received a perfect 10 with 108 Newton meters of torque, a 9 out of 10 in the integration department, and an 8 out of 10 on the parts that don't match the price, giving us a total of 45 out of 50 with an average of 9 out of 10 on the Sender Frankie scale. Woo! So do I think the Rocky Mountain Altitude Powerplay 30 is worth the $5,749? I think a big hells yes. By far the best specs for all the e-bikes so far. For a base model, it has the biggest power, biggest battery, loads of tech, and an awesome, sick new integration, the Jumbotron. There really isn't much you can pick on for this bike. The only issue that I think this bike has is the extra care needed for the extra sets of pulleys on the high pivot system. But if you're mechanically inclined and you know how to fix and you know how to take care of your bike, I don't think the high pivot is an issue. It's just you would spend a little bit more time. But other than that, this model, Altitude Powerplay Alloy 30, is near perfect. It really is. I've said it earlier in this video and I'll say it again. To all the other manufacturers that could possibly be watching this, please try to give us, the consumer, some love by doing what Rocky Mountain is doing with the battery and integration. Give the base model some love. I am 99% sure this could be the unicorn bike of 2022 and beyond. It's going to be hard to find this bike in stock. It has such good specs for a base model. This bike has definitely earned the top spot on my rating scale so far. I'm pretty sold on it just by doing some video research, but I still do want to give it a demo, and I'm looking out for this bike. Next week, we're going to be out in Sedona and we're going to do some recording, and we're going to go over some protective gear that I've been using from Dionyse of Orange County, our first official channel supporter. Go check out the gear at the Newport location and say you're a Sender Frankie fan and ask for Rich. Remember to ask for Rich and you'll get an additional 10% off. And with that, see you guys on the next one. Peace!